All right, this video is going through all the bones in the skeleton. Let's begin with the skull. If I pop off the skull and bring it down, here are the bones. Frontal bone, parietal bone, and there's two of them, one on the right, one on the left. Temporal bone, with the occipital bone back here in brown. Up here, nasal bone, maxilla, zygomatic bone, lacrimal bone, ethmoid bone, and sphenoid all the way back here, which you can see from the side as well. The jaw is the mandible, and there's another bone in here called the vomer. Another bone on the side, inferior nasal concha. I'll put a picture on the screen as this one's hard to see on this model. But from the top, removing the skull cap, you can see frontal, ethmoid, sphenoid, temporal. This is where the inner ear structures would be. Parietal, and occipital. From an inferior view, occipital, parietal, either side. Temporal also has a right and a left. This would be the left, this would be the right. This would be the sphenoid with the vomer. The black is called the palatine bone, yellow, maxilla. And deep in here, the nasal cavity would be that inferior nasal concha on the bottom. Back to the rest of the skeleton. Hyoid bone. This model is wrong. Actually, this bone does not articulate with any other bones. It looks like this model right here. This is the hyoid bone. What else do we have? We have vertebrae. Top 7, cervical. Next 12, thoracic. Bottom 5, lumbar, into the sacrum bone, and the coccyx bone. That's your vertebral column. Coming off those would be the ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. First 7 are called true ribs because they directly attach to the sternum, which is another bone in itself, the sternum. The ribs 8, 9, and 10 are what are called false ribs because they have to attach to the 7th and then attach to the sternum. We also have floating ribs, 11 and 12. Back to the sternum. Coming off the sternum are the clavicles. Nicknamed the collarbone, clavicles. Clavicles lead over to the shoulder blade, which is the scapula. Scapula bone. Here we can see the humerus, the funniest bone in the body, the humerus. Leading down to the forearm, which has 2 bones, the radius and the ulna. Coming to the hand, we've got some carpal bones, and there's 8 of them total. Here you can see them better with a little bit of a backdrop. In the middle, the biggest one, capitate. It's in line with the 3rd digit. Next to it is the hamate. Then you have the pisiform, with the triquetrum on the other side. These are actually 2 bones. Triquetrum, pisiform. Then you have the lunate, the scaphoid, the trapezium, and the trapezoid. Trapezoid kind of looks like it's trapped in between the other ones. Then we move on to the metacarpals. These here, all 5 are the metacarpals named number 1 with the thumb, and then all the way over to number 5 with the pinky finger. Then you get to the proximal phalange and the distal phalange. That's for the thumb. And the other fingers have proximal and distal phalanges as well, but there's also a middle phalange in between digits 2, 3, 4, and 5, which make them longer. To the hips. The hip bone is not a real bone. There's actually 3 bones for the hip bone. Check this picture out of the 3 bones of the hip so you can see them very clearly. But here we've got the ilium, we've got the pubis, and we've got the ischium. Those lead into the femur, the largest bone in the body, the femur. And down here we can see the patella with the lower leg having the tibia, the larger bone, and the fibula, the smaller, more lateral bone. In the foot, very similar to the hand, but instead of carpals we have tarsals. Here are the tarsals. The heel bone is the calcaneus. The talus is the bone that connects to the tibia. And we've got a couple more in here. This is called the cuboid. I always remember CC, cuboid, calcaneus, right next to each other. Here you have the navicular and 3 cuneiform bones. Lateral, middle, medial. That leads out to the metatarsals. And the same setup as the hand, the big toe has a proximal and distal phalange, but no middle for that big toe. That's digit number 1 in the foot. Digits 2, 3, 4, and 5 have a proximal, middle, and distal phalange. Quiz time. Can you name this bone? This is the sternum bone. Can you name this bone? This is the clavicle. How about this bone? This is the hyoid bone. Can you name this bone? Scapula. This bone? Take some time, look back in the video to get all these down, but this is the humerus. How about this bone? This is the ilium. Can you name this bone? This is a fibula. Let's get more difficult. How about this bone? This is a floating rib. Can you name this bone? This is the radius. How about this bone? This is the trapezium. Can you name this bone? This is the hamate. Can you name this bone? It's the pubis. How about these bones? These are vertebrae, specifically the lumbar vertebrae. Can you name this bone right here? It's the sacrum. How about this bone? Back here. It's the ischium. And way down in the foot, can you name this bone? This is the calcaneus. 3 more. How about these bones? These are the metatarsals. This one, the patella, and lastly, this bone. This is the maxilla.